Hello, everyone. Good evening. A warm welcome to this energetic webinar on a soulful topic Employee Care Road Ahead. I'm Pooja Bothra, Senior Content Lead, ETHR World. People have unique well being needs, which, when fulfilled, can be a catalyst for the professional aspirations of employers and employees alike. While change has always been constant in the corporate world, the pandemic has accelerated the pace and expanded its scope to stay ahead of curve while also overcoming the health and safety concerns and adapting to altered ways of working and living. Employees need a helping hand that holds up against the prospect of stress and burnout and nurtures the physical and emotional well-being. We are here to discuss all that and more. So, dear viewers, welcome to this show. And what can you expect from this session? In this session, we discuss what are the initiatives shaping the realm of human resources that are giving people the support and flexibility to make daily choices that enable them to be energized, confident, and aware. How are organizations providing professionals an opportunity to personalize their experiences in the ways that matter most to them in body, mind, and purpose? So keep your questions coming for the panel. We'll be taking your questions throughout the session. Without much ado, I would like to welcome an all-women power panel today. Manmeet Sandhu, CPO, PhonePe, Janani Vishwanathan, Senior Vice President, ACO, PS Deepa, Executive Director, Deloitte, India. Welcome to this roundtable, all of you. And I really look forward to having an energizing discussion with you on this topic, employee care. And together, we are going to come forward with great tips and techniques for the road ahead. Deepa, I'd like to first go to you and ask you, employee care encompasses employees' health, safety, and well-being. In this post-COVID workplace, it has become the key to drive success. Firstly, tell me why. And secondly, tell me what is your overarching strategy to proliferate employee care?
Thanks, Pooja. So the way we look at well-being has really undergone, I would say, a change, which is not necessarily started and triggered only by the pandemic. The seeds of change have been seeded slightly even before that, as people have gradually been relooking priorities to really have a holistic life. So the way we at Deloitte really see it is that well-being really comes from a balance of three components. One is having an engaged mind, an energized body, and also a very clear sense of purpose. So with an engaged mind, we are talking about emotional resilience, mental health, how do we manage our feelings, our thoughts, our behaviors in our day-to-day lives, which is life at work and beyond work. How do we really have an energized body? Managing our physical health, which has various components, right from our sleep, nutrition, fitness, exercise, and all other activities to really drive wellness and vitality of all of us. And a sense of purpose. Relooking the sense of purpose is really taken, I think, has gone to a different level now, especially in recent times, I would say so, where people and our teams tend to introspect and say, really, why am I doing what I'm doing? What's motivating me to give my very best? How do I find meaning in whatever I'm doing? So all of these really are what is a more holistic definition that we are seeing emerging on well-being. So while they're really closely interlinked, what we are saying is it really entails three key parts. How do we look after ourselves? How do we look after our teams? And how do we look out for one another? So that is really, the way we are seeing this. And what's tended to happen is that it's been rising, as we said, in the organizational agenda. We're looking back at the Deloitte Global Human Capital Trends study. So right from 2020, we are seeing that over 80% of organizations who are actually a part of the survey respondents across the globe identified well-being as a very important priority and enabler of organizational success. Now, how do we define success? It goes beyond achieving financial metrics. It's much more holistic. How do we really see, the well-being of our employees having an impact around innovation and many more aspects, so which basically overall improves the quality of relationship at work, at the workplace. So that's one thing that we've really seen quite closely, and we've been told that there are really emerging priorities that are changing in the area of well-being, when people have been talking about how they need to relook work itself or ways of working under the holistic umbrella of work transformation to really enable and enhance well-being of our people.
Very interesting, Deepa, and very nicely put. And I agree to most of the things that you've said, on holistic well-being and the three aspects that you covered. Manmeet, I'll go to you and I'll ask you that, making your organizational culture employee-centric is not nice to have, but need to have. And in today's time and age, when we are at the periphery of the Great Resignation, and, it's becoming a reality, organizations have no option, even the ones who've been delaying, but to have a very, very employee-centric culture. And when you talk about employee-centric culture, what's one thing that comes to mind is genuine employee care. So what is your strategy for, the genuine employee care, and how do you see that evolving?
Sure, Pooja. So the experience we've had at PhonePe, and I think my experience overall through my years of working has been that this is not something that you can pretend to have. This is not really a mercenary input that you can put in saying, yeah, okay, just like I'm giving you 20% more in money, I will care for you. Caring in an organization setup has to really be built into the organization philosophy, the way it thinks about its people, and the way it, at a very fundamental core level, understands how employees need to really be treated. This can't really be a one-time activity, has to be something that is built up over a period of time, because this is really about employees trusting you to believe that you will have their best interest in mind. For us, over the last 2 years, actually have been a very core example of how we've been able to do this in small ways and big ways, whether it was in terms of the fact that we ensured that nobody in the organization was asked to leave, regardless of what the situation from a business perspective was, especially during the initial days of COVID. Whether it was about making sure that support and help was available to people at all times, both in terms of financial input and information that they needed, or any additional logistical or physical support that they might need, or even the ongoing inputs that people might need from the point of view of their mental as well as physical health. Things that they cannot depend on anyone else. They need to feel that they can go to the organization, and people in the organization will collaborate and figure out how to build that for them. And really not possible for this to be something that can be top down. It really has to be something that is built into the DNA of the organization itself, because people tend to believe things like this only when they see it every day. It's a trust that you build with the organization, very easy to break. One wrong thing and it collapses. And it takes a very long time for it to be built and sustained for people. And for us, that's been the experience, that if I really have to, I can't just simply say that I care, I have to be able to demonstrate it. Otherwise, I can do more mercenary things and know that people will be there with me for 2 years, 3 years, and then they'll go on and do other things or other places which they believe care for them a lot more. And that's really what our experience has been, that it's the daily things that you do that establish this, both structurally as well as the messaging that you're able to communicate through the employees and the ongoing employee connections that you're able to build.
Very interesting, Manmeet, and very rightly said that, care is something that needs to be built in an organization's DNA. It's not something that you can talk about it. It has to come through with your I think, actions speak louder than words. So I just want to put a follow-up question here that, new age organization, let's say new age companies, new age, especially the startup sector, is it hard for them to kind of show their employees that they care? Because legacy organization has kind of a, history to prove themselves over, time and age. So any thoughts on that? And it's open to any of the panelists here.
Yeah, if I might add, I think the advantage, and again, I have done both, worked in a very large organization and worked in a startup. And I think the advantage that you have in the startup is that the philosophy of the organization is much easier to communicate, because people see it day in and day out. They see it in the interactions they have with the top leadership team, and everybody is practically interacting with the top leadership team. And it's much easier. Yes, if it's much harder to fake, but it's much easier to communicate if that's truly what you feel is true for the organization.
Yeah, to really add in to what Manmeet mentioned, it's how do we really change the culture? People need to walk the talk, and it starts with tone at the top. It becomes a wave across the organization, starting with the maybe the CEO, the founder, whosoever it may be, depending on the profile and type of organization, and then it cascades down to leaders, who are CXOs, and thereby their teams, continue to see it, and people need to experience it in every interaction and every touch point. Only then will that shift happen.
Thank you, Deepa, for that. Before I move to Janani, I'd like to once more address the audience. Viewers, please keep sharing your question answers using the chat tab. Some of you have joined just now. We want to keep this session very interactive, so we'll be taking a lot of your questions. So go ahead and post your questions and thoughts. Janani, there is an emerging need for employees wanting their employers to support their healthcare and wellness needs. How important is this for your company, and what steps are you taking?
Sure. So one of the points that I think both when Deepa was talking about it and Manmeet was also talking about it, the definition of what used to be benefits is also now sort of expanding. Earlier on, if you look at overall benefits, there is, of course, the hard benefit of what the compensation is. But now if you look at it, one of the other ways that employers really show their support or just maybe be there for the employees is through the kind of benefits that are designed around or besides the compensation that is offered. So if you think about it from that perspective, the kind of benefits that are getting offered by a lot of progressive employers these days are primarily not focused just on the hospitalization insurance, but people are going over and beyond. As an employer, for instance, at ACCO, we have a comprehensive health and wellness benefits platform where we are getting employees to get covered not just for hospitalization expenses, but also for regular primary care related needs. So the definition of what constitutes a comprehensive benefit program or plan has been changing. And we work with a bunch of partners and a bunch of progressive employers where we work with them to design the kind of benefits that they should deliver for their employees. And the more that we see is, for instance, organizations are becoming more inclusive. You have benefits that cover not just the traditional type of family structure and construct, but you have benefits that extend to same gender couples. And organizations are also pushing the envelope and saying, hey, adoption, surrogacy, infertility, some of these are life state changes for employees. And we want to be there as an employer and support them in that journey. So if you look at it from a 360-degree view, the definition of what constitutes non-cash benefits is expanding. With pandemic, the way that benefits are getting delivered, that's becoming even more comprehensive. There's mental wellness that people talk about quite a lot. So the overall benefits design and the delivery is now cutting across all of these segments, becoming more expansive, becoming more inclusionary, and also having sort of adjacencies within the core health ecosystem that are getting addressed. So at ACCO, as I mentioned, we have support across all the spectrums, and we see that even with the partners that we work with, this is the kind of change that we are seeing that's happening in the ecosystem.
Very interesting, Janani. And actually, this is a fact. And I think, the Generation Z that are coming to the workforce, they are the ones who are demanding a very, very comprehensive, benefit practice that you're talking about, because they want a very hassle-free, journey. And I think having these things really take care of a lot of things at the personal end. And it kind of really helps to enhance the well-being and wellness quotient. Manmeet and Deepa, any thoughts on you from you on this? How a comprehensive health benefit plan is important in today's organization, and how is that changing?
So for me, I absolutely agree with Janani that this is a need. This is a need that has been there for us from the beginning, in terms of making sure that if we have to be an inclusive organization, we have to make sure that all employees and all types of families can feel included in the kind of company that we are building. Has been something that we have had as part of our insurance plan for the beginning. But what I also see is that now the options to present to the employees have also increased. Their ability to choose what best suits their specific requirements has also increased. And it just therefore makes it much more easier for companies like us that are relatively small in terms of employee strength to be able to pick and choose and build something that is customized to a specific employee's needs. So yes, absolutely.
Thanks. From our context, and when I look back, I see employee benefits overall as not being something static. It is dynamic and it is evolving every day. As the needs of our people evolve and change with time, the organization really needs to look at it from the employees and the people's perspective, if they really want to stay engaged with them. So as a result, it's very, very essential that empathy is embedded in terms of benefits and what we see. We try and anticipate what our people need, be open to feedback. And many of these things, as we speak, we have discussions, with our leaders and share feedback that we receive from our people. And that goes back, to our teams managing benefits. And those gradually, there is openness, which is essential to say, okay, we probably didn't have, a benefit A, can we actually do it? Because perhaps we're actually seeing the need increase, which could start as an example with, say, the insurance cover itself and the medical benefits that may have arisen given the pandemic. We're also seeing, for example, mental health issues certainly on the rise, and everyone's talking about it. Now, is that something that all organizations cover from an insurance perspective? Not necessarily. Should we say that just because it was never done in the past, because the need never arose, it should never be done? No, we can't do that. So that's why I say, it's important to keep reviewing, revisiting, and adapting to the change.
Taking a cue from what you're saying, that keep reviewing it, keep revisiting, what policies are in place for employee well-being and wellness. My question to you is that, we had never imagined a situation when we would be first forced to work at home and then now forced to come back to the workplace. So this is taking a toll on your, mental well-being, and you might have moved back in your comfort zone to come back. So how are you helping employees to deal with this? How are you customizing well-being and wellness to enable a safe comeback to the workplace?
Okay. So I could just give a glimpse of some of the things that are underway. So we've also, gradually, we've opened up our offices and people are gradually trickling in back to work. So how does it work for us? And given that we're in the people's business, it's largely something that we've said is really going to be hybrid. So a lot of the initiatives really come back to how are different business leaders looking at it and sharing their openness with their teams to say, listen, while you may have certainly had a certain set of, mandated hours in the past, it's absolutely fine to flex your time. How do we therefore use technology, use our IT systems, email platforms, etc., to try and enable some of those by, really calling out to what are your work hours, what are the times off in the day that you may require, so that people accordingly are sensitized, and work teams, adapt meeting times, etc., to all of this, so that it's possible for people to manage personal priorities along with their work commitments. So those are the ways that we are seeing that the organization has been responding. Uh, Had I looked at this at my workplace maybe 10 or 15 years ago, I would never have dreamt of this. But that's the change that we are seeing, where it's important to be able to certainly personalize, use technology. How do we actually enhance, overall effectiveness through different digital wellness platforms? So all of those are definitely on as we speak. And basically, in short, give people the autonomy to flex their work schedule the way it works for them.
Yes, indeed. Flexibility is a key requirement today. I'll just take an audience question now. This question is from Ranjan Kumar Varanasi, and he's asking, how do you ensure authenticity in the effort for a holistic employee well-being? How do you measure in your organizations to make sure it's a sincere initiative going beyond lip service? Janani, would you like to take that one?
Sure. This is a very tricky one, really, because I think all well-intentioned efforts don't always play out the way that it plays out in your head. So one of the things that's been always critical and important is, how do you really get feedback on what you're doing and measure how many people are actually getting maybe a much better experience because of the initiative that you take or because of a policy that you have. And that sort of starts informing you that maybe there are gaps in certain areas and you need to do better on that and support people in different ways than what you had originally envisioned to. So one way to ensure authenticity or effectiveness is to measure some form of NPS or some form of feedback in terms of, hey, this is the service or experience we're delivering, how many people are really using it, and what's the effectiveness of that. Maybe the examples that we do internally is that both internally, the kind of benefits that we extend as well as the benefits that we extend with partners in terms of insurance delivery, we constantly check what's been the experience and how can we improve that. And sometimes that improvement can happen in terms of making a very minor change in your policy, which may not even cost you as much, but it's just been a blind spot for a long time. So can you keep the dialogue constantly going and also look at it from the actual employee's experience, that, okay, and I'm taking the example of insurance because that's what we do. An employee, typically when an employee walks into the hospital, especially during COVID, this was a big issue, right? Employees went into the hospital, they found it difficult to find a bed, but they managed to find a bed finally. But the hospital expenses were quite a lot. So a lot of employees couldn't really pay up that upfront, and insurance comes in much later. So is there a way that you can bridge that gap by offering an instant advance to the employee, which is actually facilitating that overall experience? So it's great to say on one end that they have a really good benefit policy in place, but actually when it comes to implementing it, how is the employee's experience there? And there could be a lot that could get lost between the two. So how the way to measure effectiveness or ensure that what you're having as a plan actually gets executed well is to constantly look at what's been the final experience, where are the chinks in that, and which of them are large enough that you really need to look at it. So it's not a one-time affair, as Deepa was alluding to in the past. This also keeps evolving, and you have to constantly set a certain path. It's like any other problem that you're solving with respect to, launching a new product or whatever, right? You have something and you need to constantly keep at it and measuring how effective is it, and are the intended people getting the best benefit out of it? And that helps you fine tune further.
Very true. And I think regular employee feedback would help. You have multiple touch points with employees, throughout their life cycle. And I think exit interviews are also a very, enlightening moment when you get to know what actually did not work with respect to the well-being and wellness policies you had for employees. So these would also help you to kind of reassess what benefits you're giving. Manmeet,
if I may add in,
yes,
one really needs to look at, end outcomes and really measure those outcomes and see where we actually do a root cause analysis and say what it could be. So measuring final outcomes through what contributes to it. End outcomes could be manifested also in terms of levels of engagement, which is many people use engagement scores as very often used, but how has the perspective changed from a culture and a mindset perspective? Can we see positive impact from a retention perspective? We've always looked at it as attrition, but are we seeing more retention on the back of some of these changes? And honestly, policies alone can't make organizations retain people. It goes well beyond that. It goes back to the experience that the organization creates, where people really feel warm, they feel welcome, they feel that the organization really and truly cares for their happiness, which makes them go the extra mile. So that is something that we continue to do through different means.
Thanks, Deepa, for that point. So Manmeet, taking a cue from Janani, and, she mentioned that during COVID, there was suddenly so much expenses with respect to hospitalization and nobody was really prepared for it. And, recently we're all suffering from dengue. Many states in India are. And so how do you help employees to deal with these sudden, medical needs and hospitalization for themselves and their families? Do you have benefits related to that?
Right. So yes, see, I'll separate it into two spaces. One is where, yes, you might have specific spikes happening in various parts of the country. And I do think that the regular insurance program that we have, the regular benefits program that we have, is able to cover for that. Depends a lot on employee awareness around how to leverage insurance, as well as the speed with which you can get the cashless thing sorted. COVID was specifically a special case, I think. It was not merely a question of being able to give them the assurance that the support is available, but also the fact that the infrastructure itself was not equipped to manage it. So very frequently, the prices were far beyond what would be the normal course of events. Finding the right information, finding the right spots was getting to be really difficult. So I think the ability where, again, that employee care component, I think, really comes in, was around being able to understand that, hey, these are some of the needs that have emerged right now in this moment. And it doesn't matter how great your insurance program is, if you're not able to make sure that there is instantaneous availability of funds to employees, that you can transfer in funds within a couple of hours of people asking, no questions asked. And people having that confidence, yes, that can happen. I can just call up this number and the company will transfer money to me. I think that was a huge thing for us in being able to provide employees with that assurance. Second was also the amount of effort put into the infrastructure around making sure that we have contacts across the country that can figure out where that space is most available, where in that particular area is a hospital bed available, where can you get that oxygen cylinder from. So that it's not merely a question of, yes, the company has a policy, to Deepa's point, that sort of covers for all of these things, but the fact that when the rubber hits the road, we are here for you, with you, in trying to solve the problem with you. And I think that's kind of a bunch of stuff that matters. The other element, I think, post-COVID that has happened is that the general levels of stress for various different reasons are beginning to rise again for folks. And they're being able to help them take a step back and think again more holistically about their mental and physical well-being becomes important. Making these particular capabilities available, having a doctor on call, having a counseling service that they can refer to, having ongoing sessions that help share other people's experiences. So you realize you're not the only one going through all of this. Also make it a lot easier for people to share their experience, let the organization know, because they know that the organization cares, and then subsequently be in a position to help solve for those problems a lot faster. I think it goes a long way in getting to the employees understanding that the organization wants to do the right thing by them. And it's not going, you start off with an abundance mentality. You don't want to sort of say, okay, give me 15 different documents that prove that this has actually happened. And I'm much more of a position to say, okay, I understand, let me figure out how best to help you.
Yes, I agree. And having digital tools help, having an app that helps you to counsel with a doctor at the time that's, convenient to you. So all that goes a long way to help employees in these conditions. I'll just take one audience question. And here, Karthik is kind of taking us to a different direction. And he's saying that, there are a lot of roundtables and a lot of sessions happening around wellness, but seldom do employees who really need get a chance to attend those because they are unable to even take 1 hour from their work. And sometimes it could be that the managers, kind of, come in way when you want to do certain things. So while an organization has the best interest in mind for employees and they are the most perfect policies and practices in place, how do you train managers to also have empathy and that care in them so that it actually goes to the employees? Because a manager plays a key role.
I'd love to kind of get us started on this one because for us, this has manager capability really has been the linchpin of all of our people policies and programs. We can do a whole bunch of things centrally. We can sort of put in all of those policies. It all fails if the manager does not understand the intent of it and believes that the only thing anybody gets measured on is the final numbers that they're sort of meeting. So for us, a large part of the investment across the last few years has really been on one, continuously communicating the intent and culture of the organization through both words and action. Who gets rewarded? How does specific behavior get encouraged and all of that? But also in terms of the way conversations happen on an ongoing basis on how do you take decisions around specific things. Building that duty of trust and care on an ongoing basis. So managers are aware that the organization is always going to focus on making sure that the right behavior is put in place and not just whether the numbers are met finally. Even in terms of how we look at performance, it is a combination of the inputs that you're putting into the particular process as well as the output. So managers understand that just pushing people really, really hard is not going to help. Being able to retain them, being able to grow them, being able to ensure that they feel that they're invested in their own development are the things that are really important.
Deepa, there is an emerging need for employees wanting their employers to support their healthcare and wellness needs. How important is this for your company and what steps are you taking?
Super important question. And as we speak, lots happening in this space. And have we even skimmed the surface? No, we're still, we've started on the journey and a long road ahead. So what are some of the ways in which we look at it? So we really see that this focus in terms of addressing healthcare, wellness needs, etc., need to be at 3 levels: at the level of the individual, teams, and at the organization itself. So one is how, and everything has to kind of work in tandem for us to really see a shift in the needle on this entire experience. So at the individual levels, where we're encouraging our people to take the initiative, take the lead, set up their own times. So times that they'd work, which we talked about earlier, what they'd like to do. So is it that they want to attend their Zumba class, or is it that they may have a child to drop or pick up? People are doing all of these things as we speak because different needs, different cities, all of this, it cannot be a one size fits all. So the hyper personalization led by the individual themselves is something that we're really seeing, coming up in a big way, and where the organization plays a role in terms of having in place flexible and enabling policies which are responsive to their needs, where people, this is a key term that we really think is going to see a lot more action, is around respect. It's basically having respect for oneself, one's needs, and thereafter only can it come to the teams. So we talked of the individual as the first. The second part of this whole thing is around teams and the power of teams, how they connect with each other, build on one another's strengths, and really together see that they have to be vibrant. They've got to then get the best from each other. So in fact, as we speak, just in the next 30 minutes, one of our businesses, and that's the business that I'm a part of, which is consulting, we're just going to be launching a really wonderful initiative called eLife. And this is really about getting all of our teams together to try and do multiple things, encourage the culture of giving, of caring, ensuring that we play, and how do we finally celebrate our personal successes and moments that mattered, as well as what could be there for a team. So all of these, we think, are ways that that are emerging. And had I even probably a year ago, this was certainly not on the radar, but it's something that has come up as a need and is trying to take some kind of a shape or form. And then finally, is the third level that we see the need for focus is the organizational level, where leaders also try and, draw the line in terms of when do you really call for meetings? Do I call for meetings which are high priority meetings on a weekend when we know we have a 5-day week? So some of those things, again, are something that, set, as we said before, tone at the top. So whether leaders really need to take responsibility to invest not just in themselves and their teams, but overall, impact and change the culture of the organization through their own ways of working, their own work styles, etc., to say that it's absolutely fine to go ahead and do this. And whatever the impact may be on any other metrics can all be overridden so long as our people are happy.
I'll just take an audience question right now. There's a very interesting question about employee assistance program. So Jimmy is asking, what are some of those new age EAP components that an organization can consider while evaluating wellness players in the Indian market? Manmeet, would you like to take that?
I can take a shot. I can talk about what our experience was and what were some of the factors that were important to us. So typically when we think about an EWAP organization, we want them to be there for counseling, for basic advisory support and things like that. In our particular instance, the thing that tilted the balance for Silver for us was the fact that they had a fundamentally inclusive approach to how they looked at it. They deeply sort of cared about the mental health components for the diverse populations, whether it is a gender or sexual minorities or any other groups of people. Their ability to engage with that set of people, being able to create specific units within, say, whether it be at, say, parents at PhonePe, whether it be new mothers. So that ability to go beyond just what the plain vanilla counseling or support services might be, and be able to consider a much, much more inclusive work environment that they're willing to support was the one big thing for us. The other element was, of course, the ability to engage for employees anonymously through the app, through things like, say, self-regulated mental meditation activities, being able to ask or react to questions using the app as and when it might be comfortable for them. So some of those variations that made it a consumer grade experience for people was some of the variations that we considered as we identified our EAP solution.
Yeah, Janani, what gaps do you see in terms of employee benefit design and delivery in recent times?
Yeah, I think Manmeet touched upon this point already. We have, in all our conversations with a lot of employers, one of the things that we're seeing as a trend that is changing is earlier the designs used, even if you think about it right now, right, the needs that somebody who is a 23-year-old single female or a single male, the needs that that employee will have in terms of health and wellness is very different from somebody who has aged parents at home and want some support that also takes care of their needs. So, however, the benefits design overall in India has not really kept pace with that. So one of the challenges that we see employers often talk about to us is, hey, we're spending all this money, but very few employees actually get the right benefit out of it. How do we think about it differently? So one trend that we have started seeing in India is that there's a lot more personalization and customization of benefits delivery and design that we're seeing. So, for instance, we work with a few clients where in fact, they pushed us and then we came out with a design which got to a point where we said, hey, the needs of somebody who's 25 years old is different. The needs of somebody who's 60 years, 55 years old in your workforce or employee base is different. How do you give flexibility and support the employees and let them choose what's right for them? Because if you give that flexibility or the option to the employee, then the likelihood that they're going to find the construct that's the most relevant for them and end up using them better is going to be higher. A few years ago, when I had joined when my first job I had joined, the benefits deck used to be just one email that used to get sent and a bunch of documents and copies sent over, and then just locked up in a cupboard with no reference after that. Today, with the ability that digital is allowing you to personalize, to customize, and make that experience of delivery great, and also you're able to drive personalization and awareness at the same time. So where we see so the gap that we've seen in the last few years has been that it's been a one size fits all kind of solution. If I want to be, I'm healthy, I'm confident about my health situation, but if the employer can support me in getting better access to mental wellness, getting access to gyms, getting access to Zumba classes, that's going to be more interesting for me. Somebody who is middle-aged is thinking about, how do I protect my parents from having adverse health conditions, and what's the financial support for it? So more flexibility in the hand of employees.
Manmeet, going to you, I'll ask you that how do you encourage employees to talk about the obstacles they're facing in the professional as well as personal life on account of physical and mental ill health? I know you mentioned that, the EAP allows you to be in the anonymous mode and, you can talk about that. That's one thing, but maybe how would you help, them cut the ice with the managers, wherein they want to have a upfront conversation with them, and so any new age strategies that are in place for that?
I will say that that's an ongoing area of learning for us as well, because what you can do is you can create an environment where it's comfortable for people to talk about these things, where either through the larger org-wide discussions that you're having, or by creating these smaller spaces using EVAP and other tools, app-based tools, enable you to have those discussions. It just creates that level of comfort that the conversations are easy to do, and the organization, and you can in fact spend time at work talking about these things, because that will contribute to a better work environment. The thing that is a lot harder, even with a focus on manager development, is enabling one person to be able to listen and respond to another person through a sensitive conversation like this in the way that is most appropriate. I mean, it takes a lot, even with trained counselors, to be able to get to the right quality of output, and expecting a colleague or a manager, either way, to be able to do this, I find is a lot of work. Continues to be an investment, but I will not say that I have a great answer to saying, yes, we have equipped everybody to have these conversations well. What we have done, however, I think, is made it a lot more easy for people to start off these discussions, and maybe over time build the networks that provide them the right support within the workplace.
I'll just take another audience question now. And here the question is that employee wellness in a remote work scenario is quite tricky. Would like to learn from your experience what has worked and what has not. How do we maintain a high touch culture in a remote environment? Pritesh is asking this. Deepa?
So what we really are seeing and trying to encourage a lot more is increased connections. We started off with campaigns like Each One, Reach One. So over a period of time, you get a call from people in your ecosystem who you've kind of interacted with closely, and the leaders call out to you and say, how are you doing? And a conversation, nothing to do with work. So really basically increase the number of conversations and engage people, and really find out about how they are doing from a personal standpoint and all of those. So that's something as a dialogue we are encouraging. Have we really perfected it? Definitely not. But it's again something that we continue to strive and do. Encourage our team leaders whatever the role they may be playing, however they're placed in the organization, to try and do more of those. Encourage the entire culture of celebrations. It could be small moments, it could be larger moments. So can we try and, be it around festivals, be it around any other events, certain groups that kind of come together, which could be having a similar need, similar perspective, try and, get together. And I know there is a fatigue point often for people doing all of these online, but we've set the ball rolling. And now what happens is many people, and it's again, I'd say it's a mixed bag. I can't say everyone is really eagerly looking to get back to work. People are working through their own personal situations. It can never be, again, a uniform experience across the board. So what we've started saying is there have been a few new joiners in the last few months, significant numbers. Some of them have never really even seen the office. Some have not met colleagues they talk to all the time on, any of the electronic platforms. So can we try and start maybe planning one day in the week where we know new joiners come in, typically on Monday every week? Can we try and start at least, having a, in-person interaction with some of them, and basically start the process of reconnecting all over again, which is really important. Not just for new joiners, again, it's important for people in the teams themselves. So gradually we may have some of our team members visiting another location, where we try and make an effort to reach out, connect, have some in-person discussions. And a lot of it may not be centered and limited to work alone, but set the ball rolling. And it's basically the personal touch that is really making or breaking this entire thing.
Very interesting points there, Deepa. And I'd also like to add to that, I think showing employees that their work matters, and, maybe thank you notes and thank you cards, they also go a long way in making them feel wanted and making them feel a part of a project and the, longer purpose of the organization. And also, I think inclusivity is very important. So especially in remote working, we've seen, when we talk to many of these leaders who come to our show, that there is a whole group of people who are introverts. So sometimes they are left out because they will not generally, speak during these meetings, and they are the silent workers, but they are also equally important. So what do you do? How do you encourage them to speak and come in the forefront, and also, get a little bit of limelight, so as to say, is also very important, especially in the remote setting. Personal touch will never go away, though I think technology is only helping us. And maybe, now we can really discuss a little bit about, how technology is also helping to improve well-being and wellness strategy with respect to, with data and data insights today. You have more enhanced decision making, and you are more able to give them what they really want. So maybe, Manmeet, you can share some insights of how are you using HR tech to be able to design better employee well-being and wellness strategy?
So I will say that it's a journey. It's not like we've gotten to where we'd like it to be. And I think in this particular scenario with remote work, and to help accelerate a bunch of that stuff, is a couple of things. One is just your ongoing ways of measuring your NPS and the engagement that employees are feeling, the specific areas where people are possibly feeling disconnected or disengaged with the organization. That's the first data point that we kind of look at, and look at it across the organization. The second then comes in terms of the reactions people have to the various initiatives that we might take. And the third is, again, the uptake on the support that we might have for counseling sessions, for engagement sessions, for ongoing discussions that we are having with folks. Again, for us, the biggest element in all of this is the extent to which managers are being effective in establishing that one-to-one relationship and are able to take it forward. You do have measures, but a lot of them tend to be your output measures after the fact, and not necessarily things that can help you predict where the situation might be. And so keeping a close track of the data in terms of what are some of the qualitative elements that seem to be making a difference. It'll take a lot longer for them to translate into results, and keeping a focus on how you can make improvements in those qualitative elements ends up being the primary thing. What is easier now is that there are various different tools, whether it be in terms of the collection of data, whether it be the analysis of the data, or even in terms of small experiments that you might want to do in different parts of the organization. All of that is now much easier, much simpler, even with the geographically distributed organization like us. The work, I believe, continues to be qualitative around being able to engage in some of those discussions and seeing how you can translate that into value for the people.
Right. If I may just add in,
sure.
so one thing that, we are really going to train our, focus on, as part of, embedding inclusive culture is how do we embed inclusion in teams? So that becomes, really important to ensure that we take everyone along. So the one point that you had asked, there may be people who are relatively silent. How do we get them engaged? So those are things that we're trying to sensitize, our teams on. Again, just started in pockets, as we're saying, some of these are started on a pilot basis, and then depending on how our experiences go, we try and then scale up. Another thing that we're really looking to do a lot more of, leveraging technology, is a lot more gamification. So how is it that we have tools to actually get communities together? So we've started also as an organization several hobby clubs and all of those. So can those kind of be ported with the help of technology onto an app and get people activated? So one of the other things that now is gaining a lot more interest is the use of Yammer, for example. People used to talk of it in the workplace, and now what's happened for us is Yammer getting integrated with Teams. So otherwise, MS Teams was typically considered just in the work domain, and no one really looked at Yammer. And many people said, I just am tired of WhatsApp groups. But now we are really trying to see how people share a lot more of their perspective of work and other personal experiences via different communities within Yammer itself. It's really becoming a good means of, right from it could be mandala art to visiting a place to, team celebration, which is virtual. All of that is happening as we speak.
Yeah, maybe I'll also jump in, Pooja, if you don't mind, for a couple of minutes on this. It's a topic that's very close to our hearts. We are maybe the only digital insurance company that literally, we hate paper. So the thing that the way we look at it is, you can order your medicines online today, you can order everything online today, but why are some of these, insurance processes still paper based and offline and so on? So for us, having a digital platform where you can just upload the documents, get your claim processed, the way we leverage digital is actually to the extent that we just hate paperwork. So anywhere where there is a paper, it needs to go, and can a digital platform enable you to do that? So today, for instance, if somebody gets a coverage from us, right from discovering the benefits that, okay, these are all the things that are covered, to figuring out how to claim, to actually getting the claim process, to tracking the claim status, all of that is delivered digitally. And we've had some instances where people have asked us, hey, do you think people will be comfortable using technology for even use cases like these? And we told them, you'd be surprised. And if we look at it, of all the kind of claims that we get in a month, over 90% of the claims are claims that come to us through digital means only. So for us, essentially, when we're delivering benefits, digital and technology is playing a very, very critical role. I think it completely eases the experience and also the operational process for both the customer as well as our employees, as well as for us. So that's just an example of how, with respect to insurance and technology, how we are addressing that.
Thanks, Janani. And now that you can be heard loud and clear, I just want to ask you one last question. Employers are having to balance rising costs, relevance, and effectiveness of benefits they design to offer employees. How's the future benefits likely to look?
Yeah, very interesting one. In our conversations with employers, the constant debate that we keep hearing a lot about is, hey, we want to deliver everything, but we also have this budget to manage and meet. So how do you marry the two? And what kind of design choices can you make when you have two competing, in some sense, priorities, right? You do have a budget to meet, and you do want to be the benefits to be as comprehensive as possible. So one of the sort of changes that we are seeing is that how can you also co-opt the employees into delivering something that is better for them? To a large, and I was giving an example of this in the past, right? Sometimes what employers realize is that they're spending a lot on something, but the actual benefit of that is going to a very limited set of employees, A, or B, it is not something that employees truly care about. So when you're looking at managing both of these competing priorities, the question is that how do you design benefit structures which are more personalized, where there is benefit that the employee sees upfront. For instance, for one of the examples of this, where this happens a lot globally, but in India we've had examples where with some employers we've delivered benefits where the employer has told us, hey, we're happy to put in a 5,000 rupees wallet for the employee. Let the employee buy the kind of coverage and plan that makes sense, that makes best sense. And in case they want to buy benefits even outside of that, they can maybe top up from their own end and get that going. So it's literally moving the control away. And with this, what you're trying to do is not the entire 5,000 employee base that the employer has is getting benefit that is relevant and tangible for them. So this is in some ways they are managing the objective of meeting certain cost related constraints while also making it employee friendly. So as we think about this, and this has been actually a recurring theme for us in all our conversations over the last 2 years, it's only actually worsened after COVID, because in general, employers want to do more, but in general, there are also higher cost pressures because of the situation that we are in with respect to rising healthcare expenses. So from a trend perspective, the one thing that is very clear to us is the benefits delivery is going to be in the future something that is going to be shared between the employer and the employee, where there's a lot more personalization, there's a lot more control that the end employee ends up having. And we are we've seen examples of that happening already.
Thanks, Janani. So this has been indeed a very interesting conversation. We started with employee care, and we understand that employee care today is not a buzzword, but it encompasses all that leads to employees' health, well-being, safety in the workplace, and that ensures the employee having a better personal and professional life. So what really is required today by the employers is to give them an opportunity to customize, personalize, give them flexible options so as to choose from, definitely, as one size does not fit all. And definitely we are making a big stride in that, but there is a lot of work that still needs to be done. With that, we come to an end of this session. Viewers, I hope you enjoyed this session. This session's recording will be archived in our YouTube channel for you to go back and have a look at it. I think many of the viewers had posted this question here. So yes, you will be able to see the recording as and when you want. Thank you, Deepa, Manmeet, and Janani for joining me today and having this wonderful conversation and making the session so informative and insightful for our viewers. Thank you so much.